Our story begins on the desert world of Jakku, where the sun burns relentlessly over endless dunes, casting jagged shadows from the husks of fallen star destroyers. The air hums with the faint whine of scavengers' speeders, darting between wreckage to claim scraps of a war long ended. In a small outpost, barely more than a cluster of tents and rusted shelters, a young woman kneels beside a salvaged X-wing panel, her hands deftly stripping wires. Her name is Ray, but she carries a secret buried deeper than the sands around her, a truth even she does not yet know. She is no ordinary scavenger. She is a clone, crafted in secret from the genetic legacy of Padmé Amidala, the late queen and senator of Naboo, whose life and love once shaped the galaxy. Ray's days are a rhythm of survival, scavenge, trade, eat, repeat. Her nights, though, are haunted by dreams she cannot explain. Glimpses of lush green fields, a grand palace with gleaming domes, and a man's voice, warm but laced with sorrow, calling a name that feels like hers but isn't. These visions stir a restlessness in her, a pull towards something beyond the horizon. She tells herself it's just the desert playing tricks, but deep down, she knows better. There's a power in her, a spark she's felt since childhood, when she'd move small objects without touching them or sense danger before it struck. She's hidden it, fearing it would mark her as different in a place where standing out invites trouble. Yet the dreams grow stronger, and with them, a question she cannot shake. Who is she, really? On this particular morning, as Ray hauls her scavenged parts toward Nima Outpost, her eyes catch a glint of movement in the distance, a cloaked figure watching from a dune's crest. She tenses, her hand drifting to the staff strapped across her back. Jakku is no stranger to bandits, but this figure feels different, deliberate. The air around them hums with an energy she can't name, and for a moment, she swears she hears a whisper in her mind, urging her to follow. She shakes it off, quickening her pace toward the outpost, but the encounter lingers, a splinter in her thoughts. She doesn't know it yet, but the figure is Luke Skywalker, the last Jedi, driven to Jakku by rumors of a girl with uncanny strength in the Force. A girl who might hold the key to unraveling a mystery from the galaxy's past. At Niima, Rey trades her scraps for a meager portion of rations, her jaw tight as Unkar Plutt sneers at her haul. She's used to his greed, but today, his words sting more than usual. "You're nothing, girl," he mutters, tossing her a half portion. "Just another nobody the desert will swallow." The words echo her deepest fear, that she is no one, with no past and no purpose. As she leaves the outpost, her steps falter, and she finds herself staring at the horizon, the dreams of Naboo flashing in her mind. She clenches her fists, torn between staying in the safety of her routine and chasing the unknown. The galaxy feels vast and cruel, but something inside her, Padmé's courage perhaps, whispers that she was meant for more. Luke, hidden in the shadows of a wrecked TIE fighter, watches her go. He's spent years in exile on Achto, wrestling with his failures as a Jedi and the rise of the First Order. But a recent discovery has pulled him from seclusion. A holocron, found in the ruins of an old Imperial lab on Coruscant, hinting at a cloning project tied to Palpatine's schemes. The holocron spoke of a child born from Padmé Amidala's essence, created to serve as a vessel for the Emperor's will. Luke's heart had raced at the name, memories of his mother's stories flooding back, stories Leia had shared from Bail Organa's accounts of Padmé's bravery. If this clone exists, she could be a pawn in Palpatine's lingering plans or a beacon of hope for the Resistance. Luke senses the Force in Rey, strong and untamed, but he hesitates to approach her. The last time he trained a student, Ben Solo fell to the dark side. Can he risk another failure? Rey returns to her makeshift home, a hollowed-out 8-at walker, and sits among her scavenged treasures, a rebel helmet, a tattered doll, a wilted flower she's kept alive with precious water. She traces the helmet's faded markings, her fingers lingering on the Alliance starboard. The dreams surge again, vivid now. A woman in a flowing gown, standing before a Senate chamber, her voice steady as she pleads for peace. Ray's breath catches. The woman's face is her own, but older, regal. She shakes her head, muttering to herself that it's impossible. Yet the force stirs within her, a gentle current urging her to trust the vision. She steps outside, the twin suns sinking into the dunes, and makes a choice. She'll follow the pull of her dreams, even if it leads to nothing. She packs a small bag, slings her staff over her shoulder, and heads toward the outpost's starport, unaware that Luke is trailing her, his own resolve hardening. The galaxy beyond Jakku is a powder keg. The First Order tightens its grip, led by Supreme Leader Snoke and his apprentice, Kylo Ren. The Resistance, under General Leia Organa, fights to rally worlds against them, but hope is thin. Rumors of a girl on Jakku, gifted with the Force, have reached both sides, though neither knows her true origin. On Coruscant, now a fractured hub of competing factions, a hidden Imperial remnant guards the last of Palpatine's secrets, including the truth of Rey's creation. They seek her, believing she could restore their master's vision. As Rey steps into the starport, a battered freighter catches her eye, the Millennium Falcon, grounded after a smuggling run gone wrong. Its pilot, Han Solo, argues with a creditor nearby, his voice sharp but tired. Rey feels a strange connection to the ship, as if it's waiting for her. Han notices her staring, his eyes narrowing. He doesn't know why, but something about her feels familiar, like a ghost from his past. Rey's decision to leave Jakku marks the first fracture in her old life. She barters her last rations for passage on a transport bound for Takodana, drawn by a name from her dreams, Maz Kanata's castle, a place of refuge and answers. As her ship lifts off, Luke boards his own X-Wing, hidden in a canyon, and follows at a distance. The Force hums between them, a thread tying their fates. On Takodana, Rey will face her first test, and the galaxy will begin to unravel the truth of her existence. But for now, she stands at the transport's viewport, Jakku shrinking below, her heart pounding with fear and hope. She is no longer just a scavenger. She is a spark, ready to ignite. The transport hums through hyperspace, its engines rattling as Rey clutches her staff, her only anchor in the unknown. Takodana looms in her mind, its name a beacon from her visions. She doesn't know what she'll find, but the woman in her dreams, Padmé, felt alive there, her presence woven into the castle's stone walls. Rey's thoughts churn, torn between excitement and dread. What if she's chasing a mirage? What if the truth of her origins is too much to bear? The Force pulses within her, a quiet reassurance, but it's unfamiliar, like a language she's forgotten. She glances at the other passengers, traders, refugees, a hooded figure in the corner whose gaze lingers too long. Her instincts sharpen, the Force warning her of danger, but she pushes it down, focusing on the journey ahead. On Takodana, Maz Kanata's castle bustles with life. Pirates, smugglers, and wanderers fill its halls, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. Maz, ancient and sharp-eyed, senses a shift in the Force as Rey's transport nears. She's heard whispers of a girl from Jakku, a scavenger with eyes like a long-dead senator's. Maz has seen too much of the galaxy to believe in coincidences. She adjusts her goggles, her mind drifting to Padmé, whom she met once, decades ago, during a diplomatic mission. The senator's fire had left an impression, and now Maz wonders if that fire burns again. She sends a message to Leia, urging her to send Han to Takodana. If this girl is who Maz suspects, the Resistance needs her, and so does Luke. Rey's transport lands in a clearing, the castle's spires rising through Takodana's lush forests. She steps onto the grass, the air cool and alive, so different from Jakku's dry bite. The castle draws her forward, its music and chaos spilling out. Inside, she navigates the crowded halls, her senses overwhelmed. The Force guides her to a lower chamber, where Maz waits, her small frame radiating authority. Maz studies Rey, her goggles glinting, and sees the echo of Padmé in her features. The same determined jaw, the same spark in her eyes. She hands Rey a small object, a silver hairpin, scorched but intact, saying it belonged to someone who shaped the galaxy. Rey's fingers close around it, and the Force surges, flooding her with visions. Padmé in a Naboo garden, her hands gentle on a child's face. A laboratory on Coruscant, where scientists in imperial cloaks whisper of a clone, and a dark figure, Palpatine, laughing as he weaves his plans. Rey staggers, the hairpin falling to the floor. Maz's voice is soft but firm, telling her the truth. She is Padmé's clone, created by Palpatine to serve his will, but her heart is her own. The revelation shatters Rey. She flees the chamber, her mind reeling. She is no one, yet she is someone, a shadow of a woman she'll never know. The Force roars within her, raw and uncontrolled, as she stumbles into Takodana's forest. Luke watches from a distance, his heart heavy. He wants to help her, but fear holds him back. What if she's too much like Ben, too easily swayed by the dark? Meanwhile, Han arrives at the castle, sent by Leia. He spots Rey in the forest, her silhouette familiar in a way that unsettles him. He approaches, gruff but kind, offering to take her to Leia. Rey hesitates, her trust frayed, but Han's sincerity, echoing Padmé's compassion, convinces her. They board the Millennium Falcon, its engines roaring to life, and head for Dakar, the Resistance base. But as they leap into hyperspace, a First Order tracker locks onto their signal. Kylo Ren, aboard a Star Destroyer, senses Rey's presence and orders a pursuit. The galaxy is closing in. On Dakar, Leia greets Rey with a warmth that feels like home, though Rey doesn't understand why. Leia's eyes linger on her, seeing Padmé's ghost in her features. She tells Rey of the Resistance's fight and the First Order's threat, but Rey's mind is elsewhere, grappling with her identity. Leia senses her turmoil and shares stories of Padmé, her mother, whose courage inspired the rebellion. Rey listens, torn between pride and pain. She is Padmé's legacy, but also Palpatine's creation. The Force stirs, urging her to choose her path. Han, watching from the Falcon's cockpit, feels a pang of loss, remembering Padmé through Leia's stories. He doesn't know Rey's truth, but he vows to protect her, as he once protected Leia. The First Order's attack comes swiftly. TIE fighters scream over Dakar, their lasers tearing through the jungle base. Rey grabs a blaster, her instincts sharp, but the Force guides her movements, deflecting shots with uncanny precision. Han and Chewbacca lead a counterattack, the Falcon weaving through the chaos. Rey fights alongside them, her staff a blur, but Kylo Ren lands amid the fray, his red crossguard saber igniting. He senses Rey's power and calls to her, his voice laced with curiosity and menace. Rey freezes, the Force connecting them in a fleeting vision. Padmé's face, twisted by Kylo's rage. She recoils, refusing his call, and flees into the jungle with Han. Luke, hidden nearby, ignites his green saber, ready to intervene, but hesitates, haunted by his past. The battle rages, and Rey's heart pounds with a single truth. She cannot run from who she is. The jungle of Dakar trembles under the First Order's assault, blaster fire stitching crimson arcs through the canopy. Rey sprints alongside Han Solo, her breath ragged, the weight of Maz's revelation pressing against her chest. She is Padmé Amidala's clone, a shadow of a woman whose courage shaped the galaxy, yet crafted by Palpatine's malice to serve his dark will. The Force surges within her, wild and unyielding, amplifying her senses as she dodges falling branches and deflects stray shots with her staff. Han, grizzled but steady, leads her toward a hidden resistance shuttle, his blaster spitting fire at pursuing stormtroopers. Chewbacca roars from the Millennium Falcon's ramp, covering their retreat, but Kylo Ren's presence looms like a storm cloud, his red saber cutting through the chaos. Rey feels him in the Force, a dark pull that mirrors her own turmoil, and she fights the urge to turn and face him. She's not ready. Not yet. Han urges her onto the shuttle, his eyes scanning the jungle for Luke. He doesn't know why the old Jedi is here, but he senses his presence, a flicker of hope amid the carnage. Rey hesitates, her gaze darting to the trees where Luke hides, his green saber unlit, but ready. She feels his conflict, his fear of failing her as he failed Ben Solo. The shuttle's engines hum, and Han pulls her aboard, shouting for the pilot to take off. As they lift through Dakar's smoke-choked sky, Rey glimpses Kylo Ren below, his mask glinting as he watches her escape. The Force binds them in a fleeting moment, her heart pounding with a vision of Padmé's face, now twisted with Kylo's rage. She clutches the shuttle's railing, her mind spiraling. Is she destined to follow Padmé's path? Or Palpatine's? The shuttle jumps to hyperspace, bound for Coruscant, where Leia believes answers lie in the ruins of Palpatine's old Imperial archives. Rey sits in silence, her fingers tracing the silver hairpin Maz gave her, its scorched edges a reminder of her origins. Han watches her, his gruff exterior softening. He doesn't know her truth, but her quiet strength reminds him of Leia, and, faintly, of Padmé, whose memory lingers in stories Leia shared. He tells Rey of the Resistance's fight, of worlds crushed by the First Order, and of Leia's hope that she could tip the scales. Rey listens, but her thoughts are elsewhere, wrestling with her identity. She is Padmé's echo, yet her life on Jakku was her own: grit, survival, solitude. Can she claim both legacies, or will one consume the other? The Force whispers no answers, only questions. Luke, trailing in his X-Wing, follows the shuttle's hyperspace trail. His heart is heavy with doubt, but the holocron's warning echoes in his mind. A clone of Padmé, if corrupted, could resurrect Palpatine's vision. He recalls Leia's stories of their mother, her grace, her defiance, and sees those traits in Rey, but also a raw power that frightens him. On Dakar, he nearly intervened, but fear of repeating his mistakes with Ben held him back. Now, he resolves to guide Rey, not as a master, but as a guardian. He sends a coded message to Leia, warning of the First Order's pursuit and urging her to protect Rey. The galaxy is converging on Coruscant, and Luke knows the truth of Rey's creation will ignite a fire no one can control. Coruscant's skyline glitters under a fractured sky, its towers scarred by decades of war and neglect. The once proud capital is now a battleground of factions, criminal syndicates, First Order loyalists, and resistance spies vying for control. Rey's shuttle lands in the Undercity, a labyrinth of neon-lit alleys and rusted platforms. Leia meets them, her presence a beacon of calm amid the chaos. She embraces Han, then turns to Rey, her eyes searching. Leia sees Padmé in her daughter's face, a ghost she's carried since childhood, and feels a pang of loss. She leads them to a hidden resistance safe house, where Finn, a defected stormtrooper, and Poe Dameron, the Resistance's ace pilot, await. Finn, still haunted by his past, senses Rey's unease and offers a quiet nod of solidarity. Poe, ever brash, suggests storming the Imperial archives to uncover Palpatine's secrets. Rey agrees, her resolve hardening. If she is to face her truth, it begins here. The archives lie beneath the old Senate building, a maze of sealed vaults guarded by droid sentinels and First Order patrols. Rey, Han, Finn, and Poe infiltrate the complex, moving through shadowed corridors where the air hums with forgotten power. Rey's force senses flare, guiding them past traps, but each step deepens her dread. She feels Palpatine's presence, a cold shadow woven into the walls. In a sealed chamber, they find a databank, its screens flickering with classified files. Finn hacks the system, revealing records of Palpatine's cloning experiments on Exegol, where Rey was created as a potential vessel for his essence. The files confirm her link to Padmé, but also hint at a failsafe, a device on Naboo, hidden in Theed Palace, that could awaken Palpatine's dormant will within her. Rey's hands tremble as she reads, her identity fracturing further. She is Padmé's heir, but also Palpatine's weapon. Before they can process the discovery, alarms blare. Kylo Ren and a First Order strike team breach the archives, their boots echoing like thunder. Rey ignites a scavenged lightsaber, blue, taken from a fallen Jedi's cache, its hum steadying her. Han and Finn open fire, while Poe plants explosives to cover their escape. Kylo advances, his saber a red scar in the darkness, and calls to Rey, sensing her conflict. He speaks of destiny, of power, his words eerily echoing Palpatine's. Rey refuses, her blade meeting his in a clash that shakes the chamber. The Force flows through her, fierce and untrained, but Kylo's strength is overwhelming. Han intervenes, distracting Kylo with a well-aimed shot, giving Rey a chance to retreat. They flee through collapsing tunnels, Poe's explosives detonating behind them, but Kylo's pursuit is relentless. Rey feels his rage, a mirror to her own, and wonders if she's fighting him or herself. The team reaches the safe house, but Leia orders an evacuation. The First Order is closing in, and Naboo is their next stop. Rey volunteers to lead the mission, driven by a need to destroy the device before it can claim her. Leia hesitates, seeing Padmé's determination in Rey's eyes, but agrees, assigning Han and Finn to join her. Luke, arriving in secret, meets Leia privately. He confesses his fear of training Rey, but Leia urges him to trust her, as she trusts Luke. He nods, boarding his X-Wing to follow Rey to Naboo. The Falcon lifts off, Rey at the controls, her hands steady despite the storm in her heart. She's no longer running from her past, she's racing toward it. Naboo's emerald fields and cascading waterfalls greet the Falcon, a stark contrast to Coruscant's decay. Theed Palace looms, its domes gleaming under the sun, but Rey feels a chill as they approach. The device lies in a hidden vault, guarded by loyalists to Palpatine's remnant. Rey, Han, and Finn infiltrate the palace, moving through marble halls where Padmé once walked. Rey's visions intensify, Padmé addressing the Senate, her voice unwavering. Anakin Skywalker, his eyes warm with love. The Force binds Rey to these memories, and she fights tears, torn between pride and fear. Han, sensing her struggle, shares a story of Leia's strength, unknowingly echoing Padmé's legacy. Finn, ever vigilant, spots traps, his stormtrooper training guiding their path. In the vault, they find the device, a crystalline orb pulsing with dark energy, its surface etched with Sith runes. Rey feels its pull, a whisper in her mind promising power, control. Palpatine's voice. She raises her saber to destroy it, but the Loyalists attack, led by a masked Inquisitor wielding a double-bladed saber. The fight erupts, Rey's blue blade clashing with the Inquisitor's red, while Han and Finn battle droid sentinels. Rey's movements are fluid, the Force amplifying her skill, but the orb's whispers grow louder, sowing doubt. Is she strong enough to resist Palpatine's will? The Inquisitor taunts her, calling her a puppet, and Rey's anger flares, her strikes growing reckless. Han takes a blaster hit shielding Finn, collapsing with a grunt. Rey screams, the Force exploding from her, hurling the Inquisitor against the wall. She destroys the orb, its shards scattering, but the victory feels hollow as she kneels by Han, his breath shallow. Outside, Kylo Ren's shuttle lands, his forces storming Theed. Luke emerges from hiding, his saber igniting to hold them back, giving Rey time to escape with Han and Finn. The Falcon roars into the sky, but First Order TIEs pursue, their lasers grazing its hull. Rey pilots with fierce precision, the Force guiding her, but Han's condition worsens. Finn tends to him, his hands shaking, while Rey fights to keep the ship aloft. Luke's X-Wing joins the fray, weaving through TIEs to protect them. The battle spills into orbit, Naboo's blue curve below, as Rey prepares for a desperate jump to hyperspace. But a Star Destroyer looms, Kylo Ren aboard, and Rey senses a trap. The galaxy holds its breath, and Rey's choice will shape its fate. The Millennium Falcon streaks through Naboo's orbit, TIE fighters swarming like vipers, their lasers searing its shields. Rey grips the controls, her knuckles white, the Force guiding her through a deadly dance of evasion. Below, Theed Palace burns, its spires wreathed in smoke from the First Order's assault. Han Solo lies slumped in the co-pilot's seat, his breath shallow, a blaster wound staining his jacket. Finn, crouched beside him, applies a med pack, his hands steady despite the fear in his eyes. Chewbacca roars from the gun turret, blasting TIEs into sparks, but a First Order Star Destroyer looms ahead, its turbo lasers locking on. Kylo Ren stands on its bridge, his masked gaze fixed on the Falcon, sensing Rey's power and her fear. She is Padmé's clone, a prize Snoke covets, and Kylo intends to claim her for the dark side. Rey's heart pounds, torn between saving Han and escaping the trap. The Force surges, sharp and clear, and she banks the Falcon toward a debris field near Endor, remnants of the second Death Star scattered like gravestones in the void. Luke Skywalker's X-Wing weaves alongside, his green lasers carving through TIEs. He senses Rey's desperation, her raw connection to the Force, and memories of his own battles flood back, facing Vader, believing in redemption. He opens a comm channel, his voice calm but urgent, urging Rey to trust the Force, to trust herself. Rey hesitates, her mind flashing to Padmé's visions, a woman who chose hope over fear. She nods, diving into the debris field, the Falcon's hull scraping against twisted durasteel. The TIEs follow, but the Star Destroyer holds back, its bulk too large for the maze. Inside the Falcon, Han stirs, his voice weak but sharp, telling Rey to keep flying, to get Finn to safety. She glances at him, seeing not just a smuggler, but a father, a hero, his grit echoing Padmé's resolve. The Force binds them, a fleeting warmth, but the moment shatters as Kylo's shuttle breaks from the Star Destroyer, cutting through the debris with predatory grace. He lands on a shattered platform, a jagged remnant of the Death Star's core, and ignites his crossguard saber, calling Rey to face him. The challenge is personal, a test of her soul. Rey sets the Falcon on autopilot, entrusting Chewbacca with Han, and leaps from the ramp, her blue saber igniting as she lands on the platform. Luke follows, his X-Wing hovering nearby, but he holds back, knowing this is Rey's fight. The duel erupts, sabers clashing in a storm of blue and red, sparks illuminating the void. Kylo is relentless, his strikes fueled by rage, but Rey moves with instinct, the Force amplifying her scavenged skills. She feels Padmé's courage, but also Palpatine's shadow, whispering of power, of dominion. Kylo senses her conflict, taunting her with visions of a galaxy under their rule, free from Snoke's chains. Rey falters, her saber wavering, but a vision of Padmé in the Senate, defying tyranny, steadies her. She counters, her blade grazing Kylo's arm, forcing him back. The platform trembles, debris shifting under their feet, and Rey senses a presence. Snoke, watching through the Force, his laughter a cold blade in her mind. The unexpected twist comes as Kylo hesitates, his mask cracking under Rey's strike, revealing Ben Solo's tormented face. For a moment, she sees not an enemy, but a lost soul, and the Force hums with possibility. Above, the Falcon spirals, ties closing in. Chewbacca fires, but the shields flicker, and Finn shouts for Rey to hurry. Luke intervenes, his X-Wing diving through the fray, lasers blazing, but a tie's shot clips his wing, sending him spinning. Rey feels his struggle, her heart torn, and with a surge of the Force, she hurls Kylo into a collapsing beam, buying time to leap back to the Falcon. She grabs the controls, pulling the ship from the debris field, but the Star Destroyer fires, its turbo lasers grazing the hull. Han, barely conscious, murmurs Leia's name, his hand gripping Rey's arm, urging her to keep going. The Falcon jumps to hyperspace, escaping to Coruscant, but the cost is heavy. Han's breath slows, his eyes closing, and Rey's chest tightens, the Force echoing her grief. Coruscant's undercity is a war zone when the Falcon lands, First Order forces clashing with Resistance fighters. Leia greets them, her face etched with worry, but her resolve unbreakable. She kneels by Han, her hand on his, as medics rush him to a Bacta tank. Rey watches, guilt and loss swirling within her. She failed to save him, just as Padmé failed to save Anakin. Leia senses her pain and pulls her close, whispering that Han believed in her, as Padmé would have. The words anchor Rey, but the battle rages on. Finn and Poe lead a counterattack, their blasters and X-Wings holding the line, while Luke, limping from his crash, joins Rey. He confesses his fear, his failure with Ben, but tells her she's more than Palpatine's creation. She's Padmé's legacy, chosen by the Force. Rey nods, her saber in hand, ready to end this. The final stand unfolds in the old Senate chamber, its vast dome cracked but enduring. Kylo Ren and Snoke arrive, their forces breaching the city. Snoke, a towering shadow, reveals the truth. Rey was meant to house Palpatine's spirit, but her will, forged on Jakku, resists him. He unleashes the Force, hurling debris at Rey and Luke, but they fight as one, their sabers a blur of blue and green. Finn and Poe rally the resistance, their courage inspiring civilians to join the fray. Rey faces Snoke, her blade meeting his dark energy, while Luke duels Kylo, their sabers echoing father and son. The unexpected twist deepens as R2-D2, hidden in the chamber, projects a hologram, Padmé's final Senate speech, her voice denouncing tyranny. The words ignite Rey's spirit, and she channels the Force, not with rage, but with clarity, disarming Snoke and driving her saber through his chest. Kylo, wounded, flees, his path uncertain, as Luke collapses, his strength spent. The Senate chamber falls silent, Snoke's body crumbling to ash. Rey kneels by Luke, his breath fading, and he smiles, seeing Padmé in her eyes. He tells her to rebuild, to trust the light, and passes into the Force, his sacrifice sealing the victory. Leia embraces Rey, their grief for Han and Luke raw but shared. The resistance prevails, Coruscant's factions uniting against the First Order's remnants. Rey stands atop the Senate dome, the city's lights flickering to life, and feels Padmé's presence, a gentle hand on her shoulder. She is no longer a clone, but a woman who chose her own path. Weeks later, the galaxy begins to heal. On Naboo, Rey stands in Theed's gardens, where Padmé once walked, and scatters Luke's saber ashes, honoring his sacrifice. Leia, now Chancellor, leads the new Republic, her reforms echoing Padmé's vision, smaller, fairer, rooted in compassion. Finn trains new defenders, His stormtrooper passed a badge of redemption, while Poe rebuilds the Starfleet, the Falcon at its heart. R2-D2, ever loyal, beeps beside Rey, projecting Padmé's image one last time, a gift from the archives. Rey smiles, her heart full, knowing she carries Padmé's fire, not Palpatine's shadow. The Jedi will rise again, not in temples, but among the people, guided by Rey's light.
On Tatooine, Rey visits a homestead, 2 gravestones weathered by sand, one for Shmi Skywalker, one for Anakin. Leia joins her, their hands clasped, a sisterhood forged in loss and hope. The twin suns set, and Rey vows to train a new generation, not as Jedi bound by rules, but as guardians of balance, as Padmé would have wanted. The galaxy is not perfect. Pirates raid, politics simmer, but without Snoke's darkness, the Force flows freely. Rey's journey, born from a clone's shadow, ends as a beacon of light, and the stars shine a little brighter. And folks, that's our story. This one hit me hard, weaving Rey's struggle with Padmé's legacy and the ghosts of the Skywalkers. I drew inspiration from The Last Jedi's themes of identity and Padmé's Senate speeches, in The Phantom Menace, wanting to honor her fire while giving Rey a path to define herself. The loss of Han and Luke stings, but their sacrifices felt true to Star Wars' heart, hope through pain. I hope you felt the pull of Naboo's gardens and Coruscant's chaos as much as I did writing it.
Let me know what you think, what you'd change, or what Star Wars what if you want next. Thanks for reading, and may the Force be with you.